Oh, hi, Mikey. Welcome. Glad to have you. So, hi to Sharon as well. Hi, Dave A. So, let me welcome everyone and then we'll get started. Um, so I was saying before we got started a little earlier, it is 50 degrees in here. No, 60 degrees. 60. That matters. So it's not horrid, but I prefer it like in the upper 60s, low 70s. So yeah, we'll put up with it. So anyway, hi to Hank, Margie, Colleen, Dave, Nick, Phyllis, who I got to meet in person in Fort Worth this past weekend. I saw her, gave her a hug. I just saw Phyllis and I'm like, I need to hug Phyllis. And I just did. And then I also saw Carl and his wife. So that was cool as well. Hi to Tim. Hi to Roxanne. Hi to Dave A. from icy Batavia, Illinois, he says. Hi to Sharon. Hi to Colleen, who said that it was a high of 46 today. That's like summer compared to here. Mikey T, hi to you. And Andy, hi from Cold, Missouri. I just talked to someone that might want me in Missouri. So she said it was like an hour and a half from St. Louis. So we'll see. Mikey says, got a lot to learn. Yep. Colleen says, wow, our wind chill wasn't 46, but still not nearly as cold as most of you. Tim says, see if you can find some good gospel music next week. So, Tim, important thing to know. I know that this is just a closed group of people, and technically I could probably get away with it. But when it comes to copyright, first off, I don't have any sort of copyright license because I'm not a church. It's just me. Secondly, I would have to get specific written permission from everyone that owns anything to do with the copyright. And as we know from Steamboat Willie just now hitting public domain, that means it would be difficult for me to find good gospel music that is available for me to use. So, sorry, we're going to stick with production music. And I am a Gen Xer, so I do like my rock and roll. So. Ruth says it's warmer here in the St. Louis area this evening. Ruth, if you're from St. Louis, maybe you can show up at that one if I do it. -10 and feels like 1. Roxanne says, hope to see you in Tampa. Me too. I'm looking forward to Tampa. I'm hoping that the weather is in the 70s when I'm there so that I can go to the beach. And Phil says, glad to see you in person. Okay, so I've got nearly everything put back together here. I don't have this, but I figured that we'd just do without, and we'll head back to the computer and pick up where we left off. I think we talked about transitions last time, so we might go from there. A lot of this is going to be familiar to a lot of us, but let's go from there. So, okay, let me make sure that is off. Huh. Okay. Nope, that's not it. Downstream key is off. So, let's see here. Command 1, Command 2. Okay, just a second. Sorry, I thought I'd gotten everything back the way that it needs to be, but apparently not so much. There we go. Okay, so let's make sure the audience is off. There we go. Okay, okay, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. I thought, okay, I don't need to connect the DeckLink Duo 2 because I'm not using that. And then it occurred to me, like right before we got started, oh, actually I am. So I tried to get around that. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we are. So we're in Pro 7, as you know. So this is actually, I said during the training that I did on Saturday in Fort Worth that when it comes to organizing your stuff, like here in these libraries, like I have in the upper left-hand corner, um, so we've it's worth having a different place for worship and hymns. And one of the reasons is something that I added today. So this is actually a copyrighted song, but uh, we're not actually gonna do any singing of it or anything. But so if I do Command F for find, you could also click the search up here, the magnifying glass, either way. And now if I click on this icon here for ProPresenter and do a search for Amazing Grace, how sweet. Okay, here we go. So notice that there are two songs in here, Amazing Grace and Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone. So let me actually stretch this out just to prove a point. Had I named that incorrectly, had I named that Amazing Grace, not Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone, it would be much more difficult to tell which is which. Now, if I click on it, now in ProPresenter we can see this, but you could see if you were in a hurry, the first two sets here are identical, and so it would be really easy to get the wrong one. So that's why I think that it's maybe a good plan to have a different library for your hymns than your worship music, for example. So talking about copyright, as I was just a moment ago, Amazing Grace, that part of it, public domain. It is before 1927, so we're good here. But Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone, part of that is much more recent. So just something for you to remember when you're looking at that. So anyway, when it comes to navigating around in slides, there's some discussion about wanting gospel music. Look, I understand that, but at least right now it's not going to be a high priority. 50s and 60s stuff would not be in the public domain, so there's no way I could play that, so sorry. Okay, anyway, so you'll notice these little letters in the upper left-hand corner. Doesn't matter whether the Holy Spirit moves your worship leader or that person just forgets their place. Doesn't matter. The result is the same, that as the operator, we didn't know where they were going. So do this. I've got the hotkeys here, so I can immediately as long as, here, let me jump into that particular song in the playlist as opposed to in the library. If I type in A, that's verse 1, S is verse 2, D is verse 3, F is verse 4. It actually goes up to 6 verses, so G and H are verses 5 and 6. And remember, you can memorize those very simply just by starting with A and moving to the right. Those are your verses. A, S, D, F, G, H. That's verses 1 through 6 right there. Bridge starts with B, so that's bridge 1, bridge 2. There's 3 bridge shortcuts, by the way, half as many as the verses. So bridge 1 is B, move to the right. N is bridge 2, M is bridge 3. When it comes to choruses, we want to have 3 of those as well, but the problem is if we start with C and go to the right, C for chorus, which is easy to remember, then we bump into the bridges. So we actually need to go to the left here. So C for chorus 1, X for chorus 2, Z or Z if you're not American for chorus 3. And that will get you most of those hotkeys. So you just tap that one letter and it takes you there immediately. Now, let's say slide 7 right here doesn't have a hotkey on it. How could I get to slide 7? Well, I could tap 7, return, or enter, depending on how your keyboard is labeled. And that should take you there if you do it fast enough. Although for some reason that didn't want to do it. Here, let's try 9 here. Oh, I guess it's because I had this selected down here. So anyway, that will take you just lickety-split right to a particular slide. And the reason why you need the return is because there's only 10 numbers, 0 through 9, that are individuals. So if you had 10 or 11 slides to get to the next one, you need to have something that says, hey, activate at this point. So that's why 1, 0, enter actually will do it if you do it fast enough. There we go. So that's what that's about. While we're talking about slide navigation, remember you can always go right with the right arrow key, or the space bar does the exact same thing. Left arrow key goes back. So that's how that works. And then we have, what I have done in the past is, and I recommend that everyone do this, is add a blank slide at the beginning of all your songs so that you can put in your background here, like I have. And you can also put other things like actions or macros there so that everything gets activated on the very first slide. If for some reason you've got a song where it just goes right into it, you may not necessarily need to do that, but you could also add a go to next timer of 0. So let me do that here. And now let's clear out the background just to make sure that everything goes ahead. And now I still click on that first slide, but it immediately goes into the first slide of verse 1. So bam, just like that. So that's a way to get around it if it does start immediately, which sometimes songs do. So it's worth mentioning, by the way, that if you, excuse me, haven't caught up from my sleep. I don't sleep as well as I used to in hotels. So anyway, it's worth mentioning that if you need to add a group, then you just right click on a slide and then you go down to group. And I've got chorus 2 here. I'm going to call this chorus 3. And now this and all subsequent ungrouped slides will be a part of it, so you just have to repeat that over and over again. Since these two were both grouped, then it's not the case that chorus 3 takes over. If this one was ungrouped, chorus 3 wouldn't take over because we've got verse 4 right there. So that's the exception to that. Advantage of having that is if we go up here to the top, here let me jiggle my mouse right there, we've got this, which is arrangements. And arrangements makes it possible to have multiple arrangements of a song and only one single entry into your library. So just double checking here. No questions right now. So let's say that my worship pastor says, okay, this time we're going to do a short version. We're going to start with the chorus, go to verse 1, skip 2 and 3, and go to verse 4, and then chorus 3. So I could do... So it said start with the chorus. So let's create a new arrangement. Give that a name that makes sense to you. I'm just going to type in gibberish right there. But, and they said start with the chorus, verse 1, skip 3, go to chorus 3, and then verse 4 or something like that, and then that's in there. So now I've got that arrangement. One thing that you should know is if you use multiple of the same thing, so in this case chorus and then use the chorus again, any changes you make to either one of these will reflect both, because in the master arrangement up here there's only one chorus. There's a chorus 2, there's a chorus 3, but these are both pointing back to this. And so when you change it here or here, it's going to actually change this one, which then therefore changes both of those. So in that case, the way around that is to have a chorus 2 or a chorus 3 or even a chorus 4 if you need to have something that's different. So, good thing to know about that. I left my regular water bottle in the rental car because it was so cold that I was in too much of a hurry. So, new water bottle. I think it's actually my oldest daughter's, but yeah, whatever. Okay. So that is a little bit about arrangements as well. It seems like there was a question that someone had, so let me check my email here real quick and see if I can find that. So if we go here into that, let me show this. So the question that I have is, do you have a video on syncing ProPresenter to Planning Center? Can I do this in ProPresenter 7.14? The answer is yes. That was John who asked that. So I do have a video on it, but let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about the process here. First off, we need to connect to Planning Center. So we go to ProPresenter up in the top left-hand corner. Go down to Settings if you're on either of the last two versions of macOS, or Preferences if you're on anything else, and go down to Services. Services is not church services, but third-party services like Planning Center. And notice that I've gone ahead and I've connected that. I could log out and type in my username and password, but that basically allows you to connect it right there. And then you can also select what download library you want to bring this into. So that is a piece of the puzzle that you need to decide. Part of the issue, though, with doing that is, let's say that you've got a mixed bag of hymns, sermons, scripture, announcements, etc. It only wants to put this into a single library, so it might be worth having a separate library just for Planning Center. But anyway, I'm just going to stick with it in the default right here. So now I can add in a new service. I'm trying to remember where this is. New Planning Center service. So next to library, the little plus button there, click on that, and New Planning Center service is right there. And you can click on that and find those. Let me try refreshing this and seeing if it brings it up. But basically, I need to go in and add one because I don't know if they've deleted my old... Oh, I know what it is. I probably set this to not show the archival old stuff. So let's go back into settings and then services. Show historical plans is what I had unchecked, and since I haven't added one to my own account in a while, that's why that was in there. So let's click plus here and back to Planning Center services. Let's see if this does show it. Let's try refresh, see if that does it this time. There we go. Okay, so let's try this one from July and select it. And notice that I hadn't actually put anything in that one. So let's try another one. So Planning Center service. Let's try the June 26th one. There we go. So you'll notice that that just brought it in nice and easy, and it connected to the Amazing Grace and Can It Be that I had in my library already. So that was pretty straightforward and pretty cool how that worked right there. So that's how you connect that. LJ says, so much good information, Paul. Well, thank you. I don't know if you're new LJ or if you're, there's an LJ at my church that my church has a membership to ChurchTechU as well, that I give them. So, don't know which LJ it is, but hi. Okay, Ruth, says, I will try and catch you in St. Louis if I get the info in time. Keep me posted. Absolutely. That reminds me, since you said that I have announced one coming up in the Jackson, Mississippi area. So I've got one coming up in Tampa, and then the very next weekend in the Bowling Green, Kentucky area. It's actually within walking distance of my college roommate's house. Also, I'm doing Worship 242 in a couple of weeks in Cedarville, Ohio, at Cedarville College. So That's another thing that I'm doing. Then I've got a couple that are coming up in March one is in March in the Atlanta area. Another one is coming up in April in the Atlanta area. That's a training for another company that is, it's a training for churches, but it's in that area. So excited about those. The other one in March is March 9th in Jackson, Mississippi. So I've got stuff probably scheduled up in March completely. We'll see. I could maybe wedge one more in. I don't know. Then I've got also in April, I've got the one in Atlanta, and I've got Wave at Cavlo in the Nashville area that's coming up. I want to say that is like April 2nd or something like that. So, yep. And then nothing firm yet until August, where I have one coming up in the Olathe, Kansas area. So, exciting stuff. Maybe something coming up in St. Louis, maybe something else coming up in Ohio, maybe something coming up in Virginia. A lot of those are tentative yet, but we'll see. Very excited about all that. So Roxanne does ask, what is the recommended number of lines per slide? What about the font style and size? So let me start with the font thing, because I think that that's an easier question to answer than the number of lines. So let me show you a little something that we have inside ProPresenter to help us with this. So if I go to Screens and then let's say here, test patterns. So it's View Test Patterns, sorry, not Screens. View Test Patterns. If you click down here, there are several test patterns. It's the text test pattern that I want you to select, and then go ahead and show that. And let me enable this display so that you can see it. So that puts up text from 18 point down to 150 point in both white text and black text. So you could put that up on your screen and then go to the furthest seat possible, maybe even just leaning against the back wall of your sanctuary, and see what is legible. Now, if you wear glasses, try taking off the glasses and seeing what is still legible. Some people, you'll never be able to see anything, so don't worry about that. But others, if your vision is still okay enough, I think that might give you a range of, hey, this is what I can normally see, and this is what, if I really need new glasses, I could see, right? And so you can make your decision based in that range. Now, with this monitor right in front of me, I can see 18 point no problem. With my glasses off, I can still see 18 point no problem. So that's not the best test for this because this is so close. But if I were to put it up on the monitor that's above the camera there, then I happen to know that I really can see it like in the 48 to 60 point range. So that's just a little something to know. So that is probably what I would do. Oh, by the way, while you're here, you can you can change what it says here for the text. So you could do the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. I think that includes all 26 letters of the alphabet, if memory serves. So you could just put that up just to see if any one of the letters is particularly illegible. Another thing is you can change the font here. So Helvetica New, Helvetica, those are good. Personally, I really like CMG Sans. So this one, not to be confused with Comic Sans, CMG, short for Church Motion Graphics Sans, that's another one. And notice here that these are very simple fonts. For whatever reason, that's the type of font without any feet on it that is considered a modern font nowadays. There are other fonts here that as soon as I change it, I think we talked a little bit about this in a recent class, but let's go ahead and scroll down here to another font. Let me hide myself. Times New Roman here. Now look at this. Notice that there is a foot here on the bottom of the Q, and the bottom of the A has feet on it as well. Bottom of the I, the U has a little foot that's swoopy there, and then the top. That is called a serif font, and it's considered a less modern font. I was actually just watched a video about a guy that does calligraphy, and he does it with quills, not a quill pen, like legitimately he has a feather from a bird and he carves it to where it's just the right shape. And he was showing that based on using that quill to write words, that you automatically get those little feet on things. That's just the nature of the beast with that writing implement. Whereas with the ballpoint pen, you naturally get something that is more like a sans serif font. So go back to CMG Sans regular here, and now you can see the difference here. So I think maybe there's a little piece of that in why this feels like a more modern font, not just that designers are using it, but like the writing implements that we have in our pockets, you know, an ink pen here, will do something much more like that than like a quill. So, and that's even with a less scripty font. There are more scripty fonts that would just even have more flourishes than a regular serif font. So that's where I would start, is probably Helvetica, Helvetica New or Neue, don't know how it's pronounced, or Church Motion Graphics Sans, CMG Sans. Those are the fonts that I would look at. So Dave said it's the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dogs, plural. Yeah, I left out S, didn't I? So anyway, let me fix that while I'm thinking about it, because I will not remember that. Okay, so there we go. Jumped over the lazy dogs. So there we go. That is how you would pick out a font. And now let's talk about how many lines. Now you'll notice that I've got 4 up right here, and that's legible. But what let me actually, let's go back into this playlist, go here, and I'll show you a couple of things at once. So if we go into reflow right here, one thing that we can do with reflow is we can combine slides. So I'm going to combine these two slides. It won't let me combine if they're grouped by themselves or if they're part of different groups. So that's why I chose this particular one, slide 5 to the old slide 6, to combine that. So now if I click on it, and here, let's go back to show mode, and I put up that 8 line, notice that it's very busy. It's also, right here I can follow along with it very easily when it's very close to me. But imagine that that was, I don't know, 20 feet, 40 feet, 100 feet away from my eye. I'm going to have a lot more difficulty following along. So that's why I think that 8 lines is actually too much. I think what I generally tell people is I'm going to click here and then insert slide break, or option enter will do it. I guess that was 7 lines. So anyway, excuse me. But go back to show mode right here. Here we go. So 3 lines, 4 lines, that's much easier to follow along with. My church typically does 2. So if we look at one of these other songs, you'll notice that I have 2 there, and that's super easy to follow along with from the congregation because it's either the top line or the bottom line. And if you just sang the top line, then your eye can go down to the bottom line. So that's a little more work for those of us that are running ProPresenter, but it does provide a level of legibility over what if I was doing 3 or 4, etc. 3 I think is fine as well, but a lot of times songs tend to have like an even number of lines. So 3 lines, you could say, okay, that's the top line, the middle line, or the bottom line. That's easy to follow along with. But if all of your verses are 4 lines, that doesn't make a lot of sense to divide it that way, right? So I think that's kind of why people have, a lot of the more modern churches have defaulted to 2 lines, just because it just enables legibility. And there's something about having the empty space, in design they call it white space. Having empty space, it's a little more settling than if you have all the words like crowded into a thing. And I admit that when I first got started doing this, I was at a church where they told me, hey, put in as many words on the screen as you can fit, and I did that. And I didn't see a problem with it. But now, knowing a little bit more about design, that's why. So Margie says that they have an older congregation, so I think I would yeah, and therefore she uses the CMG sands at 80 points. The back row is about 65 to 70 feet from the screens. So at 80 points, here, let's take a look at what that's going to look like. It's not going to be perfect here. Let me clear that out. But edit slide. So for this one, if I go here, and right now I'm at 60, So 80, I don't think that's horrid at all. See? I mean, it doesn't take up too much of the screen. It's not, and this is a hymn, so it's got longer lines just in general. But you'll notice when I was just hitting the up arrow just really, really fast, it got to the point where it kind of went to the next line. So I think in general, I'd like it to, if it's a single line, stay on one line, if at all possible. I know that some hymns, that's just basically virtually impossible. And in that case, I think instead of just letting it bleed over, I would find a good place where the breath makes sense and all, and divide the single line into two pieces. And typically I would think that if it's a longer slide, then that would be something that you could do. And like I say, that's, I think that was CMG Sans. I don't know real quick. Let me see here. Nope, that's Helvetica New. Let's do CMG Sans because I think that's a little bit wider font. Right there. So, yep, it's a little wider. And if we click on this, see, that's still not horrid. So I don't see a problem with doing 80. And again, it depends on the size of your screen. You know, if you've got a screen that's actually a little small for the room, 80 might not be big enough, even if it is just 65 to 70 feet. If your screen is massive, 80 might be overwhelming, perhaps. So just something to keep in mind as well. So that is the answer to the question of what font we should use and stuff like that. Are there other questions? I'm going to get some more water here real quick and talk about that. Dave has a good comment that as soon as I'm done with this, I'll read. He says, and I think that this is the best practice, absolutely great idea. I often listen to recordings of songs to decide on the line breaks and slide breaks. That's a great point. Because you don't want, like, you end one line and then there's a little musical interlude before the next line on the same slide. You know, especially if it's a longer musical interlude, you just don't want to do that at all. So, yep, that's a good plan. I like that, Dave. That's worth mentioning. Anyone else have any questions or comments? We can continue on there and go from there. I will say that I had planned on bringing back my library that I was using all my ProPresenter files, because I basically defaulted ProPresenter for the class that I taught in DFW, and I got distracted halfway through the process and inadvertently brought back the same one. So, oh well, no biggie. But, yeah. Let's see here. So it's probably worth, Colleen says, Dave, great idea. And that is a great idea. So it's probably worth mentioning that themes in ProPresenter 7 are just presets for basically how a slide looks. So the font, the size of the font, the color of the font, the position of the text box, those kinds of things. Basically everything that you can save in the editor, you can save to a theme. So since I changed this right here, I'm going to right click here and I'm going to go down to themes and I'm going to say new theme from selection. And I can give that whatever name I want, but I might just make it obvious, CMG Sans. So sans serif or sans. It's French, it means without serifs or without those little feet. So CMG Sans 80. And then click save. And now I can select all of the slides in here, Command A, and I'm going to right click and go down to that same theme again. So there, hide myself real quick and select that one. And now it will update everything and that's just good to go. So, but we do see a little bit of a problem here. And if I right click and select quick edit, first off, when I did something with this particular file, I was trying something that did not work. So there we go. That solves that problem. But now, remember how I said that I really didn't like having just a word or two automatically go to the next line? So how do I deal with this? Well, let's right click and edit the slide and let's try and decide what we're going to do with it, because we've got a couple of options, right? So if I go here, amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? I think probably what I would want to do is I would want to split this into two slides. I could also just stretch this out just a bit, and that might solve the problem as well, right? So there we go. That's probably the easiest solution, but let's assume that if you do that, it's bumped up against the edge. I could, if 80 was just like not the absolute minimum, it was something that I could tweak a bit, I might go down a couple of points and see if that helped it. The other thing is I could split this off into a new slide. So if I put my cursor there and option return, I believe, yes, it will split it just as it does in Reflow Editor. So just to keep this the same with two lines and having split this, I'm just going to go in here and take the longer lines and just put a return in the middle of the line like that. So that might be a little bit better way to deal with it, and here's what it did look like, and then this is how I fixed it. So I think that's probably a little bit better from a visual perspective. Remember, I could also just make it just a hair smaller on just that one and see how that looks. So a couple of different options there for that. Dave says, my upper limit for the number of lines per slide is 4. I agree. I don't like more than 4. I've seen more than 4. Sometimes, depending on how it works, Scripture can be okay with more than 4, but I really would like to keep it to much less. But I'm paying attention to whether they are being sung rat-a-tat or slowly. So that is a great point to make as well there, Dave. So Nick says, I agree with Dave. also keeping in mind tempo of the song. Faster songs need additional care to set up the lyrics to not appear so fast that they are unreadable. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Lots of great tips there. Um, Dave also says, I also want to be immersed in the energy of the song as well as the message. I'm choosing a background for the music and it should complement the music. Yeah, I agree. One thing that someone asked about was changing the tempo of a background during the middle of a song. She was saying, the song started off slowly and then when it went into the chorus, it was very fast. So I'm thinking maybe something like Egypt, if you've heard that song. I won't forget how the wonder of how very slow. And then for the chorus, you did it out of Egypt, blah, blah, blah. So we do that song in my church, and it's kind of fun to work a camera to because I kind of really get into it during the choruses. Um, or maybe those are bridges, whatever. So all that to say, uh, you can take the same background and change its tempo. And she said that it was kind of a little jarring to do so. So I suggested putting a cross dissolve on the second background to kind of smooth out that jarringness, if that helps. And Nick says, indeed, the slide should not be a distraction. I agree totally. So, anyway, that is more fun stuff. It's a little cold out here. Are there any other questions I can answer before we get going? I might let you go just a little earlier than normal because it is cold out here. Not see my breath cold, but still, I would prefer to be uh, in the house than out here in the garage right now. So, well, as I say, I am reserving a couple of tickets at any of these in-person events. So, like someone mentioned, she was close to St. Louis. The church I talked to today said that they're about an hour and a half away from St. Louis, but at least that's, fairly close. Um, I just want to make sure that it's a good fit location-wise, that they have adequate facilities and places to get food and fun stuff like that. Uh, and I just I know that we've got people in the Tampa area. Someone tonight said she was hoping to go. Well, don't buy a ticket because I'm gonna let at least a couple of people from ChurchTechU go for free. So don't pay. You're already paying me for stuff. So just throwing that in as an added bonus. Um, so I'm seeing in the chat that they say let Paul go, let him warm up, and thank you. I will. Phyllis, and those of you down in Texas, I hope that you stay warm because you're not used to cold. Here in Kentucky, we get times like this, every winter, but it seems like you guys don't get it nearly as often as we do. So I hope that you're all staying warm and are able to have a great winter, and hopefully we'll get to spring sooner rather than later. Okay. Um, and someone asked, before I let you go, someone asked, Mickey T says, I'm sitting by the fire, so I'm good. So, I don't know why my oh, I see what I did. I got my iPad and it moved the thing over there, so I need to find where that is. Okay, there we go. So Command 2. Okay. Here, let me just manually go over there because there was a question about the Atlanta training. Is the Atlanta meeting soon? That is going to be a third party, so I don't know if I can reserve some free tickets for you. I'll see what I can do. But there's one in March and one in April. And they're not in Atlanta proper, but around the city, so not, I mean, they're in the general vicinity of the city, so I'll have to look up exactly where those are. Okay, I have thoroughly enjoyed it all, and I hope to talk to you all later. Okay, have a great day. Bye.